My mother forced me to become a mother to my dead sister's children just so she could unlock a $2 million life insurance policy. I am writing this with hands that will not stop shaking because my entire life has been incinerated by the woman who gave birth to me. I was 22 years old, a top law student with a future, until Brenda stood up at the funeral and announced I would take the kids, trapping me in a nightmare I never agreed to. She did not do it for love. She did it because the bank required a legal guardian to release the funds. And she planned to use me as her puppet while she spent the inheritance on drapes and country club fees. When I discovered her scheme and tried to refuse, she did not apologize. She went on social media and told the entire world I was a heroin addict to destroy my credibility in court. I have lost my job, my apartment, and my reputation, but I hold the one thing she fears most. A DNA test that proves these children are not who she thinks they are. I am staring at the evidence that could send my mother to prison and leave these children with strangers. And my heart is ripping in half. How far is too far when you are fighting the devil in your own living room? I have the match in my hand, but I am terrified to light the fuse. Please, tell me, what on earth am I supposed to do? My name is Jordan Miller. I am 22 years old, a final year law student at the University of Chicago, and right now, I am standing in a room that smells like lilies and expensive hypocrisy. By all accounts, I should be in the library buried under tort law case studies, drinking my third iced Americano of the day. Instead, I am standing in the corner of a funeral home in the suburbs of Naperville, Illinois, watching my mother put on the performance of a lifetime. My sister, Emily, and her husband are dead, a drunk driver on I-80. Just like that, a closed casket because the damage was too severe for even the best mortician to hide. You would expect me to be crying. A normal sister would be weeping, clutching a tissue, leaning on a shoulder, but I am not normal, and neither is this family. I stood near the entrance, my back pressed against the cold floral wallpaper, observing the room with the detached scrutiny of a prosecutor preparing a case. I felt a dull ache in my chest. Yes, sir, but it was buried under layers of exhaustion and a creeping sense of dread that had nothing to do with death. My mother, Brenda Miller, was center stage near the mahogany casket. She was 55, though she told everyone at her country club she was 48. She wore a black dress that was tasteful, yet fitted enough to suggest she still took care of herself. Her blonde hair was coiffed into a perfect, mournful bob. She held a handkerchief to her face, dabbing at eyes that I knew were carefully lined with waterproof mascara. Oh, Father, it is just too much to bear. I heard her wail softly to our local pastor. My poor Emily, my perfect angel. I watched her eyes. That is the thing about Brenda. You have to watch the eyes. While her mouth trembled with grief, her eyes were darting around the room, scanning the guests. She was checking who showed up. Was the Homeowners Association president here? Yes. Was the wealthy couple from the charity board here? Yes. Good. Her social standing was secure. She is enjoying this. I thought. The realization did not even shock me. It just settled in my stomach like cold lead. She is the grieving mother, the tragic heroine. This is her moment. Two small figures sat on a velvet bench in the front row, swinging their legs. Liam, 4 years old, and Sophie, 2. They looked tiny in their stiff, black, Sunday best. Sophie was chewing on the collar of her dress, and Liam was staring blankly at the ceiling fan. They were orphans now, The word felt heavy and archaic. Orphans. A heavy hand landed on my shoulder. I flinched. Jordan. Honey, it was Aunt Carol, my mother's sister. She smelled like peppermint and stale cigarette smoke. You must be devastated. You are being so strong. I am just trying to keep it together. Aunt Carol, I said, my voice flat. Your mother needs you right now. Carol whispered loud enough for 3 other people to hear. She is falling apart. You need to step up. Family is everything. Family is a liability. I corrected her in my head. Family is an obligation you did not sign a contract for. I will do what I can, I said aloud. I looked back at the kids. Liam had slid off the bench and was poking the carpet. Nobody moved to comfort them. Everyone was too busy comforting Brenda. That was the first red flag. Though at the time, I just chalked it up to the chaos of the day. Why was the grandmother, the matriarch, not holding her grandchildren? Why was she letting them sit there like forgotten props while she accepted condolences from the mayor's wife? The service ended, and we moved to the reception held at my mother's house. It was a sprawling colonial-style home in a gated community where the grass was measured with a ruler and the neighbors sued you if your trash can was visible from the street. The house was packed. People were eating finger sandwiches and drinking the expensive wine Brenda had been saving. The noise level was respectful but buzzing. I retreated to the kitchen island. Nursing a glass of water, I checked my phone. 3 missed emails from my internship supervisor. I had a brief due in 48 hours. I needed to get back to the city. I needed to get back to my life. I watched Brenda across the room. She was holding court by the fireplace. She had stopped crying. Now, she looked serious, almost saintly. She motioned for silence, tapping a spoon against a crystal glass. The room hushed. Friends, family, neighbors. Brenda began, her voice quivering with practiced vulnerability. Thank you for being here. Losing Emily, Sautjinghalling, 2 hekje, is groter than it has broken me. A collective murmur of sympathy rippled through the room. But in this darkness, we must think of the light. Brenda continued. She gestured toward the corner where Liam and Sophie were playing with a tablet someone had shoved into their hands to keep them quiet. We must think of these precious children. My stomach tightened. I knew that tone. That was the tone she used when she volunteered me to run the church bake sale without asking me first. That was the tone she used when she told my high school guidance counselor I wanted to go to a local college instead of going out of state. It was the tone of a trap snapping shut. Many of you have asked what will happen to them, Brenda said, wiping a fresh tear. It is a heavy burden. Raising children takes youth. It takes energy. It takes a resilience that, quite frankly, a grandmother in her sunset years just does not have. Wait, sunset years? She was at the gym 5 days a week. She just remodeled her kitchen last month. I have prayed on this, Brenda said, her eyes locking onto me across the room. The crowd turned, dozens of eyes fixed on me. I felt the air leave my lungs, and God has provided a solution. My daughter, Jordan. The room went silent. I froze. The glass of water slick in my hand. Jordan, Brenda said, her voice swelling with pride. She is young. She is brilliant. She is finishing law school, and she has so much love to give. Jordan has graciously, selflessly, agreed to take full custody of Liam and Sophie. Sautjinghalling, 2 hash is greater than what? My brain short-circuited. I had agreed to no such thing. We had not even discussed it. The last time we spoke about the kids, 2 days ago, She told me the lawyers were handling arrangements. Mom, I started, my voice barely a whisper. Look at her, Brenda interrupted, clapping her hands together softly. So humble. She did not want me to make a fuss. But I have to. Jordan is going to adopt them. She is going to raise her sister's children as her own. Applause broke out. Actual applause. People were clapping. The pastor nodded approvingly. Aunt Carol was beaming. Wiping her nose, I stood there, paralyzed. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my glass against the granite countertop and shout that I was 22. That I lived in a 400 square foot studio apartment with a roommate who played the cello at 3 in the morning. I wanted to scream that I did not know how to change a diaper, that I did not even like children, that I had a career to build. But I looked at Brenda. Her eyes were hard, unblinking. There was a steeliness behind the tears. It was a look that said, "Do not embarrass me. Do not you dare make a scene." If I objected now, right here in front of the pastor, the neighbors, and the family, I would be the monster. I would be the heartless sister who rejected 2 traumatized orphans at their mother's funeral. I would be social pariah. Brenda walked over to me, enveloping me in a hug that felt more like a restraint. She smelled of Chanel No. 5 and malice. "You are a saint, Jordan," she whispered in my ear, her voice low and icy, completely different from the warm tone she used for the crowd. "Do not ruin this. Just smile." She pulled back, beaming at the crowd, her hands gripping my shoulders tightly. "Isn't she wonderful?" Everyone, "Yes, wonderful." Someone shouted. I looked down at Liam and Sophie. They were looking at me. Liam looked scared. Sophie just looked tired. I felt the walls of my carefully planned life closing in. I had been outmaneuvered. I had been checkmated before I even knew I was playing the game. "Yes," I heard myself say, my voice sounding like it belonged to a stranger. "I, Xiaoyu Jing Haoling, 2 hashes greater than I will take care of them." Brenda squeezed my shoulder, her nails digging into my skin through my blazer. "Of course you will, darling. It is what Emily would have wanted." As the guests swarmed me with congratulations, praising my sacrifice, shaking my hand, I felt a cold knot of dread form in the pit of my stomach. This was not charity. This was not love. This was a disposal. Brenda was washing her hands of the problem and dumping the dirty water on me. "Xiaoyu Jing Haolin, 2 hashes greater than." But why? Brenda loved control. She loved being the matriarch. Why would she pass up the chance to be the martyr who raised her tragic grandchildren? Why was she pushing them away so aggressively, so publicly, and so fast? I looked at my mother across the room. She was accepting a glass of wine from a neighbor, laughing softly, her shoulders relaxed for the first time all day. She did not look like a grieving grandmother. She looked like someone who had just closed a difficult business deal. "You are up to something, Brenda," I thought, gripping my glass until my knuckles turned white. "And I am going to find out what it is." My apartment was never designed to house human beings under the age of 20. It was a 4th floor walk-up on the north side of Chicago, a place that smelled permanently of old textbooks, instant ramen, and the distinct, musty odor of stress. It was a sanctuary for the sleep-deprived scholar, a place where silence was the only currency that mattered. That silence was shattered exactly 3 seconds after I unlocked the door. Sophie, my 2-year-old niece, immediately vomited on my vintage rug. It was a beige geometric print I had bought with my first paycheck from the internship. The one thing in this dump that made me feel like an adult. Now it was ruined. I stood in the doorway, holding 2 duffel bags filled with hastily packed clothes, staring at the mess. Liam, 4 years old and terrifyingly quiet, walked past the vomit without blinking and sat down on my stack of constitutional law books. My roommate, Chloe, poked her head out of her room. She was clutching her cello bow like a weapon. Her hair was a bird's nest of frizz, and her eyes were wide with horror. "What is that smell?" Chloe asked, wrinkling her nose. "I am sorry," I said, dropping the bags. "It has been a long day." Chloe looked at Liam, then at Sophie, who was now wailing at a pitch that could shatter glass, and then back at me. Her expression hardened. "Jordan, we talked about this. No guests for more than 2 nights. And definitely no children. We have finals. I have my recital. This is not a daycare." "I know," I snapped, the exhaustion finally fraying my patience. "My sister just died. Chloe, give me a break." I ushered the kids inside and closed the door, shutting out the hallway but trapping myself in the chaos. The apartment felt instantly smaller. It was a claustrophobic box, shrinking with every scream Sophie let out. I spent the next hour scrubbing the rug with dish soap and paper towels, while Liam silently took every single coaster off the coffee table and hid them in his pockets. I ordered a pizza because I had no food in the fridge, suitable for humans who needed nutrients to grow. I watched them eat, grease staining their expensive funeral clothes. I felt a surge of resentment so sharp it tasted like bile. This was not my life. My life was calculated. My life was efficient. I had a 5-year plan that involved making partner at a mid-sized firm, buying a condo with a view of the lake, and maybe getting a cat when I turned 30. Children were not on the list. That night was a descent into hell. I gave up my bed to the kids and made a nest of blankets on the lumpy sofa in the living room. I tried to open my laptop. The brief for my internship was due in 24 hours. It was a complex analysis of property liability law, and I had barely started. The cursor on the screen blinked at me, mocking my lack of progress. From the bedroom, the crying started again. It was a low, mournful sound at first. Then it escalated into a rhythmic, gasping shriek. I closed my eyes and pressed my palms against my temples. "Ignore it," I told myself. "They are traumatized. Just focus on the statute." Bang, bang, bang. The wall behind me shook. It was Mr. Henderson from apartment 4B. He was a retired mechanic who hated everyone, but he especially hated noise after 10 at night. "Shut that kid up," he roared through the drywall. I threw my laptop onto the cushion and marched to the bedroom. Sophie was standing in the middle of the bed, her face red and wet with tears. Liam was huddled under the covers, covering his ears. "Stop it," I hissed, harsher than I intended. "Sophie, you have to stop crying." She looked at me with wide, terrified eyes and screamed louder. I did not know what to do. I was 22 years old. I knew how to cite the Supreme Court ruling on eminent domain, but I did not know how to soothe a toddler who missed her dead mother. I stood there, useless and angry, watching them suffer. I felt like a fraud. I felt like a failure, but mostly, I just felt trapped. By the next morning, the cracks were visible. I had slept for maybe 2 hours. My eyes were puffy, and my head pounded with a dull, rhythmic throb. The kids were awake before the sun, demanding breakfast. I gave them dry cereal in mugs because all the bowls were dirty. Then came the email. My professor had moved the deadline up. The brief was due by noon today. Panic, cold and sharp, flooded my veins. I looked at the clock. It was 8 in the morning. I needed 4 hours of uninterrupted focus to finish. I looked at Liam, who was currently trying to stick a fork into the electrical outlet. I lunged forward and grabbed his arm. "No!" He pulled away and glared at me. "I want my mommy." "I know," I said, my voice shaking. "I want her too, but she is not here. So you are stuck with me." I needed help. I swallowed my pride and dialed my mother. She answered on the 4th ring. Her voice was groggy, but in the background, I could hear the distinct sound of a television talk show. "Saoirse Halling, due cancelletto e maggiore di hello?" "Mom, it is me," I said, cradling the phone between my ear and shoulder as I wiped milk off the floor. "I need help." "Oh, Jordan," she sighed. "I was just resting. The grief. Saoirse Halling, 2# is greater than it comes in waves. You know, I could barely get out of bed this morning." I gritted my teeth. "I need you to take the kids for the day. Just for today. I have a deadline that determines whether I pass this semester. I cannot work with them here." There was a pause. I heard the clink of a spoon against a ceramic mug. Was she drinking tea? Was she eating breakfast in bed while I drowned? "Jordan, honey, we discussed this," Brenda said, her voice dripping with condescending patience. "I am not in a state to care for children. My nerves are shot. The doctor said I need absolute quiet. They are your grandchildren." I argued, my voice rising. "I am about to fail my class. I do not have money for a nanny. I do not have diapers. I do not have anything." "Well, that sounds like a time management problem," she said smoothly. "You wanted to take them. Remember? You stood up in front of everyone and accepted the responsibility. You cannot just back out when it gets hard. That is not what adults do." I felt the blood drain from my face. I wanted to take them. She had ambushed me. She had forced me into a corner with the entire town watching. "Mom, you forced me," I whispered. "Stop being so dramatic." Brenda snapped. The sweetness vanished, replaced by the steel I knew too well. "Emily would be disappointed in you, complaining about school when her children have lost everything. Where is your heart?" "Jordan?" She hung up. I stared at the phone, listening to the dial tone. The red flag was no longer waving. It was burning. It was not just that she was grieving. A grieving grandmother would want to see her grandchildren. A grieving grandmother would offer to send money, or order groceries, or send a friend over to help. Brenda had done none of those things. She was sitting in her 4-bedroom house, drinking tea, watching television, and actively refusing to help the daughter she had burdened with 2 toddlers. She did not care about the kids. She did not care about me. I looked at the messy apartment, the ruined rug, the stack of law books that represented my future, now acting as a chair for a silent 4-year-old boy. This was not a temporary struggle. This was a setup. My phone buzzed again. It was a notification from my bank app. Low balance alert. You have $42.15 remaining. I looked at the kids. They needed lunch. They needed clothes that were not stiff funeral attire. They needed diapers. I called my internship supervisor. "Hi, Mr. Sterling," I began, my voice trembling. "Jordan, where is that brief?" He barked. Saoirse Halling, 2# is greater than I have a family emergency." I stammered. "My sister passed away and I have custody of her children. I need an extension." There was a long silence on the other end. "We are a high-performance firm." "Jordan," Mr. Sterling said coldly, "we all have families. If you cannot handle the workload, perhaps you are not cut out for this track. Get it to me by 5, or do not bother coming in tomorrow. The line went dead. I sat down on the floor amidst the cereal crumbs. The walls of the apartment felt like they were physically moving closer, crushing me. I was going to lose my internship. I was going to fail my class, and I had $42 to my name. Liam walked over to me. He held out a piece of paper. I took it. It was a drawing he had made with a blue highlighter he had stolen from my desk. It was a picture of a stick figure woman with X marks for eyes. "Mommy's sleeping," he whispered. I looked at the drawing, then at him. For a second, I did not see a grieving nephew. I saw an anchor, a heavy, iron anchor that had been tied around my ankle, dragging me down into the deep, dark ocean while my mother watched from the shore. Dry and comfortable. Why? I asked the empty room. Why was she so desperate to get rid of them? It did not make sense. Brenda loved the image of a perfect family. Raising these kids would have made her the ultimate martyr, the saint of the community. Why pass that up? Why risk looking like a bad grandmother unless Xiaoyu Jinghaoling or Jinghaodayu, unless the alternative was worse, or unless there was something else she wanted more than attention? I stood up. The tears stopped. A cold clarity washed over me. If I was going to survive this, I had to stop acting like a victim. I had to stop acting like a daughter. I had to start thinking like a lawyer. Brenda had a motive. I just did not know what it was yet. But I knew one thing for certain. She was lying to me. And if she thought she could sacrifice my future to save her own comfort, she was about to learn that I was my mother's daughter after all. I picked up my laptop. I put cartoons on for the kids. I opened a new document, but I was not writing my legal brief. I was writing a list of every inconsistency, every lie, and every strange behavior Brenda had shown in the last 48 hours. The first crack had appeared in the perfect facade of the Miller family, and I was going to stick a crowbar in it and pry it wide open. By the 3rd week, my life had devolved into a series of calculated losses. I had lost my internship. Mr. Sterling had fired me via email at 2 in the morning, citing inability to prioritize professional obligations. I had lost 5 pounds because I was feeding the kids real food while I survived on the crusts of their sandwiches, and I had lost the ability to sleep for more than 3 hours at a stretch. My bank account was in the negative. I had overdrafted twice just to buy diapers and formula. The shame of it burned my throat like acid. I was Jordan Miller. I was the smart one. I was the one who was going to escape this suffocating suburban destiny. Now, I was begging my roommate for an extension on my half of the rent. I had reached my limit. I packed the kids into my beat-up sedan. The car smelled like sour milk and despair. We were going to my mother's house. I was done asking. I was done hinting. I was going to drop them off, even if I had to leave them on her doorstep like a package. The drive to the suburbs felt like crossing into another dimension. The chaotic noise of the city faded, replaced by the eerie, manicured silence of my mother's neighborhood. The lawns were impossibly green. The houses stood like fortresses of upper-middle-class security. I pulled into Brenda's driveway. Her car, a pristine silver sport utility vehicle, was parked in the spot where my father used to park before he divorced her and fled to Florida. I unbuckled the kids. Liam was silent, clutching a stuffed bear that had lost an eye. Sophie was asleep, her face sticky with dried tears. "Come on," I said, my voice tight. "We are going to see Grandma." I did not knock. I still had my key. I opened the front door and stepped into the foyer. The house was cool, climate controlled to a perfect 70 degrees. It smelled of lavender and expensive cleaning products. It was so quiet, so peaceful. The contrast to my chaotic, screaming apartment made me want to scream. Mom, I called out, Sao Jing Haoling, 2 dièse est supérieur à silence. I walked further in, dragging the diaper bag that felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Sao Jing Haoling, Deva, Mom. I heard a hum, a cheerful, melodic humming coming from the sunroom at the back of the house. I walked toward the sound, my anger building with every step. I turned the corner and froze. Brenda was there. She was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked her prize-winning rose garden. But she was not grieving. She was not lying in bed with a migraine. She was holding up swatches of fabric against the window, tilting her head critically. A man in a sharp suit stood next to her, holding a measuring tape. I think the velvet is too heavy for this light. Brenda, the man said, perhaps the silk blend in eggshell? You are right, David, Brenda chirped, her voice light and airy. Eggshell is much more. Sao Yu Jinghaoling. 2# is greater than hopeful. I need a fresh start. New drapes. New energy. She turned and saw me. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. A glitch in the matrix, before smoothing back into a mask of weary concern. But I had seen it. I had seen the annoyance. Jordan, she said, dropping the fabric. I did not know you were coming. You are redecorating? I asked, my voice trembling with disbelief. I am losing my mind, losing my career, and you are buying silk drapes? Lower your voice, Brenda hissed, glancing at the decorator. David, give us a moment, please. David nodded and scurried out of the room like a frightened rabbit. Brenda turned on me, her eyes narrowing. How dare you barge in here? I am trying to cope. Jordan, retail therapy is a valid coping mechanism. Coping? I laughed. A harsh, jagged sound. You are not coping. Mom, you are remodeling. While I am drowning, I have negative $40 in my bank account. I got fired. I cannot do this anymore. I am leaving them here. I gestured to Liam and Sophie, who were standing in the doorway of the sunroom, looking small and unwanted. No, Brenda said instantly. Absolutely not. Why? I demanded. You have the space. You have the money. You have the time. Why did you make me take them? Because you are young, Brenda shouted, her composure cracking. You can bounce back. I am 55 years old. Jordan, I have served my time. I raised you. I raised Emily. I am done with diapers and tantrums. I deserve my peace. So you sacrificed me? I stepped closer, fueled by a rage I did not know I possessed. You threw my life in the trash so you could have. Sao Yu Jinghaoling. 2# is greater than what? Quiet mornings and eggshell drapes? It is temporary, she said dismissively, waving her hand. Once the insurance clears, you can hire a nanny. You will be fine. The word hung in the air. Insurance. What insurance? I asked. Brenda froze. Her eyes darted to the left. A classic tell. Just Sao Yu Jinghaoling. 2# is greater than Emily's policy. A small thing. It takes time. How much? I pressed. Not much. Enough to help with diapers. Now, please, take the children home. I have a yoga class in an hour. She turned her back to me. The conversation was over. That was Brenda's way. Dismiss and deny. I grabbed the kids and walked out. But I did not leave the house. I put Liam and Sophie in the car, strapped them in, and gave Liam my phone to play a game. Stay here, I told them. Aunt Jordan forgot something. I ran back into the house. Brenda was upstairs. I could hear the shower running. I slipped into her home office. It was a forbidden zone growing up, a place of bills and secrets. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I knew where she kept the important papers. The bottom drawer of the mahogany desk. It was locked. I looked around under the potted fern. It was where she always hid the key. I lifted the pot. There it was, a small silver key. I unlocked the drawer. It slid open with a smooth, expensive glide. Inside were neatly organized files. I flipped through them frantically. House deed, tax returns, medical records. Then I saw it. A thick manila folder labeled Emily, Estate, and Trust. I opened it. The first page was a letter from a major insurance company, Pacific Life. Subject: Life insurance payout. Policy number 894402. My eyes scanned the numbers. I stopped breathing. Benefit amount: $2 million. $2 million. I flipped the page. There was another document, a trust agreement for the house Emily owned. A massive property in the suburbs worth at least another $800,000. I read the fine print. My legal training kicked in, dissecting the legalese with terrifying speed. Condition of release: the full sum of the insurance benefit and the title to the property located at 42 Oak Lane shall be released to the legal guardian of the beneficiaries, Liam Miller and Sophie Miller, upon proof of custody. Additional clause: if the legal guardian is deemed a minor or financially unstable, a trustee may be appointed to manage the funds until the beneficiaries reach the age of 25. My hand shook so hard the paper rattled. I grabbed another piece of paper from the back of the file. It was a handwritten note in Brenda's unmistakable cursive. It looked like notes from a phone call. Banker said, "Jordan has no assets." Perfect. Strategy: Jordan signs as guardian. I apply as trustee for financial oversight. Result: I control the funds. Jordan does the work. I give her a stipend. The world tilted on its axis. It was not just about laziness. It was not just about her not wanting to change diapers. It was a heist. She needed me to be the legal guardian because she knew if she applied for it, her own finances might be scrutinized. Or maybe she just did not want the legal headache of raising them. But she needed someone to be the guardian so the money would be released. And then she planned to swoop in. She would argue that I was a broke student, which I was, thanks to her, and that I could not handle $2 million. She would petition the court to let her manage the money for the sake of the children. She would control the fortune. I would control the vomit and the sleepless nights. She would give me a stipend, an allowance, like a child. A wave of nausea hit me, followed by a cold, burning fury. I looked at the date on the notes, 2 days after Emily died. While her daughter's body was still at the morgue, Brenda was on the phone with a banker, plotting how to embezzle her grandchildren's inheritance. This was why she forced me to take them publicly. This was why she refused to help financially. She needed me to be desperate. She needed me to be broke. The more unstable I looked, the easier it would be for her to argue that she should control the money while I did the grunt work. "You monster," I whispered to the empty room. I heard the water shut off upstairs. I quickly snapped photos of every document with my phone. The policy, the trust conditions, her handwritten notes. My hands were steady now. The fear was gone. I put the file back exactly as I found it, locked the drawer, put the key back under the fern. I walked out of the house. I walked past the sunroom with its future eggshell silk drapes. I walked out the front door and got into my car. Liam looked up from the game. "Grandma coming?" "No, buddy," I said, starting the engine. "Grandma is not coming." I looked at the house one last time in the rearview mirror. It looked beautiful, stately, a perfect American home. Inside lived a parasite. I drove away, but I was not driving back to my apartment to cry. I was driving toward a war. Brenda thought she was playing chess with a toddler. She thought I was just her emotional, overwhelmed daughter. She forgot one thing. I was a law student, and I had just found the evidence that was going to bury her. The sadness I had felt for weeks evaporated. In its place, something cold and hard settled in my chest. I was not going to just give the kids back. Not anymore. That would let her win. She would just find another way to get the money. No, I was going to play her game, and I was going to bankrupt her. The drive back to the city was a blur of red taillights and adrenaline. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my fingers began to cramp. Beside me, on the passenger seat, lay my phone containing the photos of the documents that proved my mother was a thief. $2 million. She was going to steal $2 million from her own grandchildren and toss me a few crumbs to keep me quiet. I got the kids into the apartment, fed them toast and scrambled eggs, and put on a movie. I needed silence. I needed to think. The anger I had felt in Brenda's office was morphing into something more volatile. Recklessness. I wanted to hurt her. I wanted her to feel the panic I had been living with for 3 weeks. I picked up my phone and dialed her number. She answered on the first ring, her voice calm, as if we had not just had a screaming match in her sunroom. "Hello, Jordan. Did you forget something?" "I know," I said, my voice low and shaking. "I know about the insurance." "Mom, I know about the $2 million. There was a silence on the other end. It was heavy and thick. "I have no idea what you are talking about," she said, her tone flattening. "Do not lie to me." I snapped. "I saw the file. You need a legal guardian to sign for the money. That is why you forced me to take them. You want me to be the puppet while you pull the strings. You were snooping in my house?" Her voice rose, sharp and indignant. "I am going to call the insurance company," I threatened, playing my hand too early, fueled by rage rather than strategy. "I am going to tell them everything, and then I am going to call Child Protective Services. I will surrender custody to the state before I let you use these kids as a piggy bank." "You would not," Brenda whispered. "Watch me," I said. "If I hand them over to foster care, you get nothing. No guardian, no payout. Jordan, and listen to me. No, you listen. Transfer $10,000 to my account tonight so I can feed your grandchildren. Or I make the call. 萧景浩ling. 2. I hung up. I threw the phone onto the couch and paced the small living room. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I felt a surge of triumph. I had cornered her. I had leverage. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was in control. I was wrong. I had underestimated Brenda Miller. I thought I was fighting a greedy woman. I forgot I was fighting a narcissist who cared more about her reputation than her own flesh and blood. The counterattack began at 6 the next morning. I woke up to the buzzing of my phone. It was not a call. It was a notification, then another, then 20 more in rapid succession. Facebook, Instagram, text messages. I rubbed my eyes and unlocked the screen. The first thing I saw was a post from Brenda. She had tagged me. She had tagged our pastor. She had tagged every single relative, neighbor, and family friend we knew. The post featured a photo of Emily, looking beautiful and radiant, next to a photo of me from high school where I looked tired and disheveled. The caption read, "Please, prayer warriors, I need you now more than ever. My heart is shattering into a million pieces. As many of you know, my daughter Jordan took in poor Emily's children. I thought it was an act of love, but I have learned a terrible truth. Jordan called me last night in a rage. She demanded money. She threatened to throw Liam and Sophie into the foster care system if I did not pay her thousands of dollars immediately. I suspect Xiao Yu Jinghao Ling 2# is greater than, and it kills a mother to say this. Xiao Yu Jinghao Ling 2# is greater than. I suspect she has fallen back into bad habits. The erratic behavior, the aggression, the desperation for cash. It sounds like addiction. Please pray for Jordan's soul, and please pray for my grandbabies. I am trying to legally intervene, but the law is complicated. If you see Jordan, please tell her to come home. Tell her we love her. Despite her demons, I dropped the phone. It clattered onto the hardwood floor. Xiao Yu Jinghao Ling 2# is greater than addiction? I had never touched a drug in my life. I barely drank alcohol. I was a law student on the dean's list. Bad habits? What was she talking about? My phone buzzed again. A text from Aunt Carol. "Jordan, I am so disappointed. Those babies need stability. Not a junkie for an aunt. Get help." A text from Mrs. Gable. "My childhood piano teacher, praying for you. Dear, Jesus can break every chain." A text from Tyler. "My ex-boyfriend. Wow, I knew you were stressed, but I did not know you were using. That explains a lot. Do not contact me." I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I could not breathe. My chest constricted, a physical pain radiating outward. This was not just a lie. This was an assassination. She was not just defending herself. She was nuking my credibility so that if I did go to the authorities about the insurance, no one would believe me. I would just be the ranting, money-hungry addict daughter. I grabbed the phone to comment, to defend myself, to scream that she was lying, but there were already 200 comments. She always was the jealous sister. How could she threaten to put them in foster care? Monster. I saw her at the grocery store the other day. She looked awful, definitely high. Strangers were analyzing my appearance. People I had known for 20 years were dissecting my character based on one Facebook post. Gaslighting is not just making you doubt your reality. It is mobilizing the world to crush your reality until you are the only one standing in it. There was a knock at the door. I froze it. Was it the police? Had she called the police? I walked to the door on trembling legs and looked through the peephole. It was Chloe, my roommate. She had stayed at her boyfriend's place last night. I opened the door. Chloe did not step inside. She stood in the hallway, her cello case on her back, looking at me with a mixture of pity and fear. "Xiao Yu Jinghao Ling." "To Chloe?" "To Navistan," she said, her voice stiff. I saw the post. "It is a lie," I said quickly, desperation creeping into my voice. "Chloe, you live with me. You know I am not on drugs. You know I am not an addict." Chloe shifted her weight. She looked down at the floor. "I do not know." "Jordan, you have been acting weird lately. The mood swings, the crying, not sleeping, and you lost your job." Xiao Yu Jinghao Ling. R. Jinghao Dayu, because I have 2 toddlers. I screamed, because I am overwhelmed. I cannot have this drama. Chloe said, taking a step back. My recital is next week. I spoke to the landlord. He says if there is illegal activity, you have to go. I think, Xiaoyu Jinghao Ling, 2 hash is greater than I think you should leave. Jordan, you are kicking me out? I am asking you to leave before Mr. Henderson calls the cops. I am sorry. She turned and walked down the hallway. I stood there, the door open, staring at the empty corridor. I was 22 years old. I had been a top student. I had a future. In the span of 12 hours, my mother had turned me into a pariah. I closed the door and locked it. I slid down against the wood until I hit the floor. Liam walked into the hallway. He was holding his empty juice cup. He looked at me, sitting on the floor with my head in my hands. Aunt Jordan? He asked softly. I am hungry. I looked up at him. My vision was blurry with tears. I know, baby, I whispered. I know. I was completely alone. I had no job. I had no friends. I was about to lose my apartment. And now, thanks to the court of public opinion, I was a drug addict. Brenda had checkmated me again. She knew I would not actually put the kids in foster care because I was not a monster. And she knew that by painting me as unstable, she set the stage perfectly for her next move, stepping in as the savior to control the money, while keeping me trapped as the unpaid, discredited nanny who could not leave because she had nowhere else to go. I crawled over to my bag and pulled out the little cash I had left. $7. I laughed. It was a dry, hacking sound that scared me. She wanted a villain? She wanted a crazy daughter? Fine, I whispered, wiping the tears from my face with the back of my hand. My sadness was hardening into something brittle and sharp. If the world was going to treat me like a monster, I might as well stop playing by the rules of the good girl. I looked at the phone again. The comments were still rolling in. Brenda is such a saint for dealing with this. Poor Brenda. I stood up. My legs were shaky, but I stood up. I was not going to reply on Facebook. I was not going to beg for forgiveness for sins I did not commit. I went to the kitchen and opened the cupboard. I took out a box of macaroni and cheese. I started boiling water. The spiraling was over. I had hit the bottom, and the thing about hitting the bottom is that you have solid ground to push off from. I needed a lawyer, a real one, not a student, and I knew exactly who to call, not to defend me, but to attack her. But first, I had to survive the day. The knock on the door came 2 days later, sharp and authoritative. It was not the tentative knock of a neighbor or the rhythmic pound of a delivery driver. It was the knock of someone who believed they owned the building. I knew who it was before I even looked. I opened the door. Brenda stood there, impeccable, in a cream-colored trench coat that probably cost more than my entire tuition. Behind her stood a woman I did not recognize. A severe-looking brunette with a clipboard and a lanyard that read Family Services Consultant. May we come in? Brenda asked. It was not really a question. I stepped aside, my hand still gripping the doorknob. The apartment was a disaster zone. Toys were scattered like landmines. A drying rack full of toddler clothes occupied the center of the living room. The air smelled of stale milk and anxiety. Brenda walked in, her nose wrinkling delicately as she surveyed the squalor. The woman with the clipboard followed, her eyes scanning the room. Making notes? This is worse than I thought, Brenda murmured, loud enough for the clipboard woman to hear. She turned to me, her face arranging itself into a mask of tragic disappointment. Oh, Jordan, look at how you are living. I am living like a single mother of two with no income. I said, my voice hoarse. Who is this? This is Linda, Brenda said, gesturing to the woman. She is an old friend from the church. She works with families in Sautsinghaoling. Those numeral es mayor que crisis. Linda nodded curtly. Ms. Miller, your mother has expressed deep concern about the welfare of these children. Based on the environment, Sautsinghaoling, 2# is greater than I would say. Her concerns are valid. I looked at Linda, then at Brenda. This was not an official visit from Child Protective Services. This was a staged intervention, a piece of theater designed to intimidate me. What do you want? Mom? I asked, cutting to the chase. Brenda said, unbuttoning her coat. She sat down on the edge of the sofa, careful not to touch a sticky spot. We need to talk about the future. Jordan, clearly, you cannot handle this. You have been fired. Your roommate wants you out. And frankly, you look unwell. I look unwell because you told the entire internet I was a heroin addict. I shot back. I said, bad habits. Brenda corrected smoothly. People drew their own conclusions, but that is beside the point. I am here to offer you a lifeline. She reached into her oversized designer bag and pulled out a sleek leather folder. She placed it on the coffee table, pushing aside a sippy cup. What is that? I asked. A solution, she said. It is a co-guardianship agreement and a power of attorney for property. I stared at the documents. Here is the deal, Brenda said, her voice dropping to a business-like pitch. You keep the children. You continue to be their primary caregiver. You handle the day-to-day, the feeding, the schooling, the doctors. You are good at the details. Jordan, you always were. Sautsinghaoling, 2# is greater than, and you? I will handle the finances, she said, tapping a manicured nail on the leather folder. I will manage the trust. I will invest the insurance money so it grows for their future. And because I am generous, I will give you a salary. A salary, I repeated. $2,000 a month, she said. Plus, I will pay the rent on a nice 2-bedroom apartment near my house. You can focus on raising them properly, without the stress of money. $2,000 a month. That was $24,000 a year to raise 2 children in Chicago, while she sat on a $2 million mountain of cash. And the rest of the money? I asked. The other $1.9 million? It stays in the trust, she said quickly. Under my supervision, you will get 10% when they turn 18. Consider it a bonus for a job well done. 10%. I said $200,000 for 18 years of my life. You are a student with no prospects. Jordan, Brenda said, her eyes hardening. Take the deal, or Linda here files a formal report with the state. With your current reputation and living situation, they will take those kids away in an hour, and you will be charged with neglect. I looked at Linda. She was writing furiously on her clipboard. Is that true? Linda? I asked. You are going to report me for poverty? Linda looked up, her expression blank. Instability is a risk factor. Ms. Miller. I looked back at Brenda. She was smiling. A small, triumphant smile. She thought she had won. She thought I was broken. She thought I was the same scared little girl who used to cry when she criticized my outfit. But something inside me snapped. It was not a loud snap. It was the quiet, terrifying sound of a bridge collapsing. I looked at the documents. I looked at the pen she was holding out to me. If I signed this, I would be her servant for the next 18 years. I would be trapped in her web, begging for scraps, while she played the benevolent matriarch. If I did not sign, she would destroy me. She would take the kids, put them in the system just to spite me, or find another way to get the money. There was no good option. There was only survival. I need time to read it, I said. My voice was calm, eerily calm. Brenda frowned. It is standard boilerplate. Just sign it. Jordan, do not be difficult. I am a law student. Mom, I said, meeting her gaze. I do not sign anything I have not read. Leave it here. I will bring it to you tomorrow. Brenda studied my face, looking for deception. She saw only exhaustion. Fine, she said, standing up. Tomorrow at noon, at my house. If you are not there with the signed papers, Linda makes the call. She buttoned her coat. Clean this place up, Jordan. It is embarrassing. They left. The door clicked shut. I stood in the silence, staring at the leather folder. I walked over to the window and watched them get into Brenda's sport utility vehicle. They were laughing. They were probably discussing where to go for lunch. I felt a coldness spread through my veins, starting from my fingertips and reaching my heart. The fear was gone. The sadness was gone. All that was left was a razor-sharp clarity. She was not my mother anymore. She was a predator, and you do not negotiate with predators. You hunt them. I picked up the folder and threw it in the trash. I was not going to sign it. I went into the bedroom. Liam and Sophie were napping. They looked so peaceful, unaware that they were just pawns in a $2 million game. I packed a bag, not a big one, just essentials. I went to my laptop. I logged into the university portal. I withdrew from the semester. It hurt to click that button. It felt like cutting off my own arm. But I could not be a student and a soldier at the same time. Then, I pulled up the photos I had taken in Brenda's office. The insurance policy, the trust fund. I needed allies, and I knew exactly where to find the most powerful ally of all. I remembered something Emily had said once. Years ago, when she was drunk on wine coolers, she had joked about her safety net. I thought she meant a savings account. I went to the closet where I had shoved Emily's personal boxes, the few things Brenda had let me take from the house before she started redecorating. I dug through old yearbooks, scarves, and photo albums. Finally, I found it, a small, velvet jewelry box. Inside was not jewelry. It was a flash drive. I plugged it into my laptop. It was password protected. I tried her birthday. Incorrect. I tried the kids' birthdays. Incorrect. I tried Brenda Sucks. Incorrect. Then I remembered Emily's favorite book, The Count of Monte Cristo, a story about patience and revenge. I typed, Edmond Dantes, access granted. The folder opened. There were dozens of files, scans of letters, screenshots of text messages, and a folder labeled DNA. Soyujing Haoling. 2 hashes greater than I opened it. A PDF file popped up. Paternity test results. Child, Liam Miller. Alleged father, Vance Sterling. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. I stared at the name, Vance Sterling. Not just any Vance, the Vance Sterling. The real estate tycoon who owned half of downtown Chicago. A man worth hundreds of millions. A man who was married to a senator's daughter. And, ironically, a man who was on the board of directors for my mother's beloved country club. I sat back, the breath rushing out of me. Brenda did not know. If she knew, she would not be chasing a measly $2 million from an insurance policy. She would be blackmailing a billionaire. Emily had kept this secret. She had played the long game. And now, the game was mine. I was not the victim anymore. I was the one holding the nuclear codes. I closed the laptop. I walked into the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were dark, circled with fatigue, but they were hard, flinty. Tomorrow at noon, I whispered to the reflection, I would not be at Brenda's house at noon. At noon, I would be walking into the headquarters of Sterling Enterprises. This was the point of no return. I was about to blow up my family, my reputation, and possibly my safety. But looking at the empty fridge and the eviction notice on the table, I realized I had nothing left to lose. Let us see how Brenda likes it when the predator becomes the prey. The lobby of Sterling Enterprises was a cathedral of glass and steel, designed to make you feel small. I stood by the reception desk, wearing my one good suit, a navy blazer I had bought for moot court competitions. It was slightly wrinkled from being stuffed in a duffel bag, but it would have to do. I am here to see Mr. Vance Sterling. I told the receptionist, a woman whose skin looked as flawless as the marble floors. Do you have an appointment? She asked without looking up. No, but tell him I have a file from Emily Miller. Her fingers paused on the keyboard. She looked up, her expression shifting from boredom to guarded curiosity. One moment. She made a call, speaking in hushed tones. 5 minutes later, a security guard in a dark suit appeared. He did not escort me out. He escorted me to a private elevator. My heart was beating a frantic rhythm against my ribs. This was reckless. This was dangerous. But the image of Brenda's smug face and the threat of Linda, the consultant calling Child Protective Services, pushed me forward. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse office that overlooked the entire Chicago skyline. Vance Sterling sat behind a desk that looked like it was carved from a single piece of ancient oak. He was older than he looked in magazines, maybe 55, with silver hair and eyes that were cold and calculating. He did not stand up. He did not smile. Emily Miller, he said, his voice a deep rumble. I have not heard that name in 4 years. I heard about the accident, a tragedy. It was, I said, remaining standing. I clutched my laptop bag tighter. And you are, Xiaoyu Jinghaoling. 2# is greater than the sister? Jordan Miller. What do you want? Jordan. Money? Ayub? He leaned back, lacing his fingers together. I do not do charity for ghosts of my past. I do not want charity. I said, I want to show you something. I pulled out the printed copy of the DNA test. I placed it on his desk, sliding it across the polished wood. He looked at it. He did not touch it. He just stared at the paper for a long time. The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. Where did you get this? He asked, finally, his voice devoid of emotion. Emily's safety deposit box. I lead. There is more. Diaries, photos, timelines. He looked up at me. The coldness in his eyes intensified. Is this blackmail? No, I said firmly. This is a negotiation. I could have you arrested for extortion before you leave this building, he said softly. You could. I agreed. But then the files go to your wife. And the press? Emily set up a dead man's switch. If I do not check in every 24 hours, the emails go out automatically. It was a bluff. A total, desperate bluff. But I said it with the conviction of a prosecutor delivering a closing argument. Vance studied me. He was assessing the threat. He was a businessman. He dealt in risk management. What do you want? He asked again. My mother, Brenda Miller, is trying to steal the insurance money Emily left for the kids. She is trying to ruin my life to get control of it. She has branded me an addict. She is threatening to put your children in foster care if I do not sign over control. Vance's jaw tightened. My children, Liam and Sophie. I said, they are your children, Mr. Sterling, and right now, their grandmother is treating them like a paycheck. I told him everything. The insurance policy, the smear campaign, the visit from Linda, the threat to call Child Protective Services. I cannot raise them, I admitted, my voice breaking for the first time. I am 22. I have no money. I have no home. And honestly, Saoyudzing Haoling, 2 hash is greater than I do not want to be a mother yet. I want my life back, but I will not let her win, and I will not let those kids suffer. Vance stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the city. You want me to take them? He asked. I want you to ensure they are safe. I said, you have resources. You can arrange a private adoption, a closed adoption, a wealthy family in Europe or California, somewhere far away from Brenda, somewhere they will have everything. He turned back to me. And what do you get out of this? Freedom, I said, and revenge. Vance looked at me for a long moment. Then, a small, grim smile touched his lips. You are definitely Emily's sister, he said. She had that same fire. He pressed a button on his desk. Send in Davis. A moment later, a man in a sharp gray suit entered. He looked like a shark in human clothing. This was Davis, Sterling's personal fixer and attorney. Handle it, Vance said, pointing to the DNA test. Verify it, then execute the contingency plan for illegitimate heirs. Level 4 privacy protocol. Davis nodded, taking the paper. And the mother, the grandmother, crush her. Vance said simply. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of legal violence. Vance's team moved with terrifying efficiency. They did not just help me. They orchestrated a coup. First, they moved me and the kids out of the apartment. We were placed in a secure suite at a high-end hotel downtown. Room service, new clothes, security guards at the door. For the first time in a month, I slept for 8 hours. Then, the counter-narrative began. Davis did not bother with Facebook posts. He went straight to the courts. He filed an emergency motion for custody on my behalf, backed by affidavits from 3 doctors certifying I was drug-free and mentally sound. He also filed a restraining order against Brenda Miller and associate Linda, citing harassment and attempted extortion. But the real tragedy, the personal tragedy for Brenda, was just beginning. I received a text from Aunt Carol on the second day. Jordan, what is happening? Police are at your mother's house. I turned on the television in the hotel room. It was not on the news yet, but I knew what was happening. Vance had unleashed the hounds. His lawyers had found irregularities in Brenda's taxes. They found unauthorized withdrawals she had made from Emily's accounts before Emily died. Small amounts, but enough to prove a pattern of financial abuse. But the blow that hurt the most was not financial. It was social. Vance Sterling was a powerful man. A whisper from him could close doors. Suddenly, Brenda's credit cards were being declined. Her membership at the country club was under review due to ethical concerns. The charity board she sat on asked her to step down temporarily. Her world, built on appearances, was crumbling. I sat in the hotel room, watching Liam and Sophie play with a mountain of new toys. They were laughing. They were safe. But as I watched them, a heavy blanket of sadness settled over me. This was the end. I was going to give them up. I had made a deal with the devil to save them from a witch. Vance had arranged for a couple in Switzerland, an infertile banker and his wife, friends of Vance, to adopt them. The paperwork was being drawn up. It would be a closed adoption. I would never see them again. It was the right thing to do. They would grow up in luxury, loved and protected, far away from the toxic swamp of the Miller family. But as Sophie climbed into my lap and rested her head on my chest, I felt a physical ache in my heart. I had spent a month resenting them, viewing them as burdens. But in the trenches of this war, I had become their protector. "Aunt Jordan," Sophie whispered. "Yes." "Sweetie, are we going home?" "No," I said, stroking her hair. "You are going somewhere much better. Somewhere with mountains and chocolate. Are you coming?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "No, Aunt Jordan has to stay here, and Sao Yudzing Haoling. 2 hash is greater than fight the bad guys." She looked at me with those big, innocent eyes. "Okay, beat them up." I laughed through my tears. "I will." My phone rang. It was Davis. "Miss Miller," he said, his voice crisp. "The grandmother has taken the bait. She has filed a countersuit claiming you are unfit and is demanding an emergency hearing tomorrow morning. She is bringing witnesses. She thinks she has you cornered." "Perfect," I said, wiping my eyes. "Is everything ready?" "The trap is set," Davis said. "Mr. Sterling has also arranged for the new will to be discovered tonight. We will present it in court tomorrow. And the DNA? Sealed. Brenda will never know. The children will be on a plane to Zurich 2 hours after the hearing concludes." "Okay," I said. "Let us finish this." "Sao Yu, Jinghao Lin." 2. I hung up. The tragedy was not that I was losing the kids. The tragedy was that in this family, love was just a leverage, and children were just assets. The only way to save them was to remove them from the equation entirely. I looked at the city lights outside the window. Tomorrow, I would walk into that courtroom and destroy my mother. I would burn down the bridge to my past so thoroughly that there would be no way back. I was not the scared student anymore. I was not the reluctant nanny. I was the executioner. The Cook County Domestic Relations Court was a place where love went to die, usually strangled by paperwork and billable hours. The air inside the building was recycled and stale, carrying the faint, metallic scent of desperation. It was a smell I knew well from my law school clinic rotations. But today, it smelled different. Today, it smelled like blood. I walked down the long, linoleum-tiled hallway flanked by Davis and 2 other associates from Sterling Enterprises. They walked in a phalanx around me, shielding me from the prying eyes of the curious onlookers. I wore a charcoal gray suit that Davis had ordered for me. It was tailored, sharp, and cost more than my first car. My hair was pulled back into a severe bun. I wore no makeup. I looked like exactly what I needed to be. A serious, competent, and aggrieved guardian. At the end of the hall, I saw her. Brenda was sitting on a wooden bench outside courtroom 304. She was surrounded by her own entourage. Aunt Carol, Mrs. Gable from the church choir, and a man I recognized as Silas Thorne, a strip mall divorce lawyer known for playing dirty. Brenda looked the part of the suffering matriarch to perfection. She was wearing a modest black dress, a pearl necklace, and she was clutching a tissue to her nose. When she saw me, Her eyes widened with a theatrical mixture of hope and heartbreak. "Jordan," she cried out, starting to rise. "Oh, thank God. Come here, honey." She reached out her arms, playing to the audience of 3 bailiffs and a janitor. I did not break stride. I did not look at her outstretched hands. I looked straight into her eyes, and for a brief second, I let my mask slip. I let her see the cold, hard hatred burning underneath. She froze, her arms dropped. "Save it for the judge, Mother," I said, my voice low and devoid of warmth. We swept past her into the courtroom. The room was smaller than it looked on television. Wood paneling that had not been updated since the 70s. Fluorescent lights that hummed with a headache-inducing frequency. And the elevated bench where Judge Marilyn Stone sat. Judge Stone had a reputation. She was tough, impatient, and hated theatrics. Brenda had picked the wrong judge for her performance. We took our seats at the defendant's table. Brenda and Mr. Thorne sat at the plaintiff's table. The air between us was thick enough to choke on. "All rise," the bailiff announced. The hearing began with the usual procedural drone. Mr. Thorne stood up to give his opening statement. He was a sweaty man with a comb-over that was fighting a losing battle against gravity. "Your Honor," Thorne began, hooking his thumbs into his suspenders. "We are here today because of a tragedy upon a tragedy. My client, Mrs. Brenda Miller, has lost her beloved daughter, and now she fears she is losing her grandchildren to a system of neglect and instability." He pointed a finger at me. "The respondent, Jordan Miller, is a young woman in crisis. She has no job. She has been evicted. There are credible reports of substance abuse. She is, quite simply, unfit." Mrs. Miller is stepping forward, out of the goodness of her heart, to save these children. I stared straight ahead, my hands folded on the table. Goodness of her heart. The phrase made my stomach turn. Then, it was Brenda's turn to take the stand. She walked up to the witness box with the slow, heavy steps of a woman carrying the weight of the world. She swore to tell the truth, a concept she had abandoned years ago. "Mrs. Miller," Thorne asked gently, "tell the court why you are seeking full custody of Liam and Sophie." Brenda sniffled. She looked at the judge with watery eyes. "I just want them safe, Your Honor. When Jordan took them, Soyudzing Haoling, Tuhash is greater than I thought she could handle it." But then the phone call started. Late at night, she was screaming. She was demanding money. She said, "Soyudzing Haoling, Tuhash is greater than." Brenda paused, choking back a sob. She said if I did not give her $10,000, she would leave them at a fire station. A gasp rippled through the small gallery. Mostly Aunt Carol and Mrs. Gable. "Liar," I whispered, barely moving my lips. Davis placed a calming hand on my arm. "Wait," he murmured. "Let her die the whole." "And did you see any evidence of drug use?" Thorne asked. "I saw the signs," Brenda said, nodding tragically. "The erratic behavior, the dilated pupils, the messy apartment. It broke my heart. I offered to pay for rehab, but she just threw me out." "Thank you, Mrs. Miller," Thorne said, looking satisfied. No further questions. Judge Stone looked at Davis. "Cross-examination?" Davis stood up. He did not hook his thumbs in his suspenders. He buttoned his suit jacket with a precise, crisp movement. He walked toward the witness stand like a predator stalking wounded prey. "Mrs. Miller," Davis said, his voice smooth and baritone. You stated that your primary concern is the safety of the children, correct? Of course, Brenda said, dabbing her eyes. And you stated that you offered to pay for rehab? Yes, I would do anything for my daughter. Is that why you refused to answer Jordan's calls for the first 3 weeks of her guardianship? Brenda blinked. Saoyuting Hao Ling. 2 hashes greater than I was grieving. I was unwell. Unwell, Davis repeated. Too unwell to help change a diaper, but not too unwell to meet with a Mr. David Ross regarding custom drapery on the morning of October 12th. Brenda stiffened. I do not see what drapes have to do with this. It goes to your state of mind. Mrs. Miller, you claim you were incapacitated by grief. Yet, credit card records show you spent $4,000 on home decor in the week following your daughter's funeral. Thorne stood up. Objection. Relevance. Overruled. Judge Stone said, leaning forward. I want to hear this. Davis continued, pacing slowly. Let us talk about the phone call on the night of October 15th. You claim Jordan demanded money. Is that correct? Yes. She was hysterical. And you claim she threatened to abandon the children? Saoyuting Haling. Ketu. Yes. Mrs. Miller. Are you aware that Jordan Miller records her calls? It was a lie. I did not record my calls, but Brenda did not know that. In Illinois, 2-party consent is required, but Davis was gambling that Brenda's paranoia was stronger than her knowledge of the law. Brenda's eyes darted to me. Panic flickered behind the mask. Saoyuting Haoling. 2 hash is greater than well. She said things that implied it. Brenda stammered. Implied, Davis said sharply. So she did not say it? She wanted money. Brenda snapped. She is broke. Yes, she is broke, Davis agreed. Because she has been raising 2 children with 0 financial support from their wealthy grandmother. Which brings me to the matter of the Pacific Life Insurance Policy, number 894402. The room went deadly silent. Brenda's face drained of color. She looked like a ghost. I do not know the policy number by heart. She whispered, No? But you knew enough to call the claims adjuster 2 days after Emily died. We have the phone logs. Mrs. Miller, you inquired about the payout timeline. Specifically, you asked if the funds could be released to a trustee if the guardian was deemed Saoyuting Halin. 2 hash is greater than financially incompetent. Davis walked back to our table and picked up a piece of paper. It was the photo I had taken of her handwritten notes. Your Honor, I would like to submit into evidence Exhibit B. Handwritten notes found in Mrs. Miller's home office, detailing a strategy to, and I quote, control the funds. Jordan does the work. Give her a stipend. Mr. Thorne looked at the paper, then at his client. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. This is a violation of privacy, Brenda shrieked, forgetting her tears. She broke into my house. You gave her a key. Mrs. Miller, Davis said calmly, and she was retrieving items for the children. But let us address the core issue. You are not here for the children. You are here for the $2 million. That is a lie. Brenda stood up in the witness box, her hands gripping the railing. The facade was cracking. The grieved grandmother was gone. The entitlement was pouring out like sewage. I am the grandmother. I am the responsible one. She is a child. She will waste it on clothes and Saoyuting Haling. 2 hekje is groter dan and drugs. It is my money. I raised Emily. I deserve to manage her legacy. Your money? Davis asked softly. I thought it was for the children? I am the family patriarch. Sinhaling, due cancelletto, è maggiore di matriarch. Brenda yelled, her face turning a mottled red. Those kids are my ticket. Ling. 2 hash is greater than my responsibility. She caught herself, but it was too late. She had almost said ticket. The slip was fatal. Judge Stone slammed her gavel. Mrs. Miller, sit down and control yourself. Brenda sank back into the chair. Realizing what she had done, she looked at the gallery. Aunt Carol was staring at her with her mouth open. Mrs. Gable looked horrified. Davis turned to the judge. Your Honor, we have one final piece of evidence. A document discovered by the executor of Emily Miller's estate late last night. He pulled a document from his briefcase. This was the masterpiece, the fake codicil to the will that Vance's team had forged. Or rather, reconstructed and authenticated through their deep channels. What is this? Judge Stone asked. Taking the document, it is an amendment to Emily Miller's living trust. Davis explained. It explicitly states that in the event of her death, if Brenda Miller attempts to contest guardianship or petition for control of the insurance funds, a poison pill clause is activated. Brenda stared at Davis, her mouth trembling. What? The clause states, Davis continued, his voice ringing through the courtroom, that if Brenda Miller interferes, the entire $2 million insurance payout is to be immediately donated to the Chicago Feline Rescue Society, and the house is to be sold, with proceeds going to the same charity. No, Brenda screamed. It was a primal sound. You cannot do that. That is insanity. Cats? She leaves $2 million to cats instead of her own mother? It seems Emily knew exactly who her mother was, Davis said coldly. It is a forgery, Brenda shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. She wrote it. She is trying to cheat me. It is notarized and filed, Judge Stone said, looking at the paper with raised eyebrows. She looked at Brenda with undisguised disgust. Mrs. Miller, it appears your daughter anticipated your greed from beyond the grave. This is not fair. Brenda was sobbing now, but they were ugly. Angry tears. I have debts. I have the club fees. I need that money. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. The truth was out, naked and ugly. Quiet. Judge Stone banged the gavel. I have heard enough. Mrs. Miller, your petition for custody is denied with prejudice. Furthermore, based on your testimony and the financial evidence presented, I am ordering an investigation into your handling of your late daughter's accounts prior to her death. Sinhaling. 2. But, Mr. Thorne, get your client out of my courtroom before I hold her in contempt, Stone barked. Brenda looked at me. Her face was a ruin of running mascara and twisted rage. She looked like a demon whose mask had melted off. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I just looked at her with a profound, empty sadness. We are done, I mouthed. The bailiff escorted a wailing Brenda out of the courtroom. Aunt Carol and Mrs. Gable did not follow her. They stayed in their seats, looking at their hands, distancing themselves from the social fallout that was about to incinerate Brenda's reputation. Davis turned to me and closed his briefcase. We won, did we? I asked quietly. We accomplished the objective, he corrected. The money is safe. Brenda is neutralized, and the transfer of custody to the Swiss family is approved. I nodded. My chest felt hollow. I walked out of the courtroom. The hallway was empty except for Brenda, who was arguing with Mr. Thorne near the water fountain. When she saw me, She stopped. She pulled herself up, trying to summon one last shred of dignity. You think you are smart, she hissed, her voice venomous. You think you won, but you are nothing. You are alone. You have no family now. I wash my hands of you. I stopped. I walked up to her until I was inches from her face. I could smell the fear radiating off her. You did not wash your hands. Mom, I said, my voice steady and cold as a glacier. I cut them off. I leaned in closer, and here is the truth. There was no poison pill. The cat charity clause? We made it up. But you believed it because you know exactly how much Emily hated you. You proved to everyone in that room that you care more about money than your own blood. You did this to yourself. Brenda's jaw dropped. You, Saoting Haling. 2 hash is greater than you, bitch. Goodbye, Brenda, I said. Do not contact me. If you do, I will release the recording of this conversation to your bridge club. I walked away. I walked down the long hallway, my heels clicking on the floor. I did not look back. I had won the battle. I had destroyed the enemy. But as I pushed open the heavy doors and stepped out into the blinding sunlight of the Chicago afternoon, I realized that in a war like this, there are no victors, only survivors. And now, I had to do the hardest part. I had to go back to the hotel and say goodbye to the children I had just fought to save. News travels fast in a small town, but in the affluent suburbs of Chicago, scandal travels at the speed of light. By the time I left the courthouse, the whispers had already started. By the time I reached the hotel, the whispers had turned into a roar. Vance's team had been thorough. The court transcripts were sealed. But the poison pill rumor, the story about the grandmother who tried to steal from orphans and was thwarted by a donation to a cat charity, was leaked to a local gossip blog. It was the kind of juicy, schadenfreude-filled story that suburbanites devoured with their morning lattes. My phone, which had been a device of torture for weeks, was suddenly quiet. No more hate mail. No more accusations of addiction. The silence was unnerving. I sat in the hotel suite, watching Liam and Sophie eat their last American meal. Chicken nuggets and fries. My suitcase was packed. Their suitcases were packed. In an hour, a car would take them to a private airfield. They would fly to Zurich to meet the Schroeders. The couple Vance had vetted. They were good people. I had seen their file. They had a chalet in the Alps, 2 golden retrievers, and a desperate desire for children. Liam and Sophie would grow up skiing and speaking 3 languages. They would be loved, but they would not be mine, and they would not be Miller's. There was a knock on the door. It was Davis. Everything is ready, he said, stepping into the room. He looked at the kids, and for a brief moment, his shark-like demeanor softened. The jet is fueled. I knelt down in front of Liam. He was wiping ketchup off his face with his sleeve. Liam, look at me, I said, my voice trembling despite my best efforts. He looked up, his blue eyes so much like Emily's. Are we going now? Yes, I said. You and Sophie are going on an adventure. You are going to meet new friends, and they are going to take such good care of you. Are you coming? He asked again. I cannot, I said, forcing a smile that felt like it was cracking my face. I have to stay here and finish school, but I will always be thinking about you. Always. I pulled him into a hug. He smelled of shampoo and innocence. I held Sophie, who was too young to understand anything except that she was getting a new teddy bear for the plane. Be good. I whispered into their hair. Be happy, and forget us. Forget everything about this place. I watched them walk out the door with the nanny Vance had hired for the flight. The door clicked shut, and then the silence was absolute. I was alone. I checked out of the hotel an hour later. I had nowhere to go. My apartment was gone. My roommate hated me. My mother was my enemy. I took a cab to a coffee shop near my old university campus. I needed to figure out my life. I opened my laptop and logged onto Facebook, purely out of morbid curiosity. The feed was a bloodbath. Brenda's carefully constructed image was being dismantled brick by brick. The comments on her prayer warrior post had turned against her. I heard she tried to embezzle the trust fund. My cousin was the stenographer. She said Brenda called the kids her ticket. I always knew she was fake. Who buys drapes right after a funeral? Then, the organizations started distancing themselves. The official page of the Naperville Garden Club posted, "We are saddened by the recent allegations regarding one of our members. We would like to clarify that Mrs. Brenda Miller has been placed on indefinite leave." The church choir page, "Praying for truth and integrity in our community. God sees the heart." It was brutal. It was swift. It was exactly what she deserved. But then, I saw the posts about me. So Jordan was the hero all along. I feel bad for judging her. She gave up custody to a wealthy family. That is so selfless. She knew she could not raise them. I closed the laptop. I did not want their praise any more than I wanted their scorn. They did not know the truth. They did not know I had blackmailed a billionaire. They did not know I had forged a will clause. They did not know I had effectively sold my niece and nephew for my own freedom. I was not a hero. I was just the survivor who walked out of the wreckage. I ordered a black coffee. My hand shook as I lifted the cup. A woman walked past my table. It was Mrs. Gable, the piano teacher. She stopped when she saw me. "Jordan," she said, her voice tentative. I looked up, bracing myself for a lecture. "Sao yu ting haling. 2# is greater than I heard what happened." She stammered. "At the court, I wanted to say, Sao yu ting haling. 2, I am sorry for the things I texted. Your mother, she can be very, Sao yu ting haling. 2# is greater than persuasive. It is fine." "Mrs. Gable," I said tiredly. "Is it true?" she asked, leaning in, her eyes hungry for gossip. "Did she really try to steal $2 million? "Ask her," I said. "If you can find her." Mrs. Gable nodded, looking vindicated. "Well, nobody has seen her. Her car has not moved from the driveway in 2 days. The lights are off. People are saying she might move to Florida. Good for her," I said. Mrs. Gable hesitated, then walked away. I looked out the window. It was raining. The city looked gray and washed out. I had won the public war. Brenda was a social pariah. I was vindicated, but victory felt incredibly lonely. I had burnt my family to the ground to save myself. I had cut off the toxic limb, but now I was bleeding out. I had my freedom. I had the hush money Vance had promised. A check for $50,000 was sitting in my bag, labeled as a consulting fee. It was enough to finish law school, enough to get a new apartment, enough to start over. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Liam asking if I was coming with them. I picked up my phone and deleted my Facebook account. I deleted Instagram. I deleted every contact associated with my old life, starting with Brenda and ending with Aunt Carol. I was a ghost now. I stood up and walked out of the coffee shop into the rain. I did not open my umbrella. I let the cold water soak through my clothes, washing away the stench of the courthouse, the funeral home, and the lies. The public fallout was over. The crowd would find a new villain next week, but I had to live with myself forever. 3 months later, I was sitting in a small, sterile apartment in Madison, Wisconsin. I had left Chicago. I could not walk down those streets anymore without expecting to see Brenda around every corner, or Vance Sterling's black car idling at the curb. I had transferred to the University of Wisconsin Law School. Vance's connections had smoothed the way, ensuring my credits transferred and my gap in employment was explained away as a family sabbatical. It was amazing what powerful men could do with a phone call. The apartment was quiet. There were no toddler screams, no banging from angry neighbors, just the hum of the refrigerator and the scratching of my pen on legal pads. I was studying for finals again. My life had technically returned to normal. I was Jordan Miller, law student. I was on track to graduate. I had money in the bank, but inside, I was hollowed out. I had developed a routine to keep the memories at bay. I woke up at 5. I ran 6 miles until my lungs burned and my legs felt like lead. I studied for 12 hours. I ate tasteless salads. I slept. I did not make friends. I did not date. I was a machine. That Tuesday, I received an email. It was from a secure, encrypted server. The sender was anonymous. Subject, update. My heart stopped. I clicked it open. There was no text, just a video file. I hesitated, my cursor hovering over the play button. Did I want to see? Did I deserve to see? I clicked play. The video showed a large, sun-drenched garden with snow-capped mountains in the background. 2 golden retrievers were chasing a ball, and there, running with them, were Liam and Sophie. They looked different. Liam had grown taller. He was wearing a thick red sweater and laughing as he threw a stick for the dogs. Sophie was bundled in a pink snowsuit, waddling after him, her cheeks rosy with health. A woman walked into the frame, Mrs. Schroeder. She picked Sophie up and spun her around. Sophie squealed with delight. Clinging to her new mother's neck, they looked happy, not just safe, but genuinely, deeply happy. The shadows under Liam's eyes were gone. The fear was gone. The video ended. I sat there in the dark apartment, the glow of the laptop screen illuminating my face. I should have felt relieved. I should have felt triumphant. I had saved them. I had pulled them out of the fire. But then the tears came. They were not the angry, frustrated tears of the past few months. They were deep, racking sobs of grief. I grieved for the sister I had lost. I grieved for the aunt I could have been if my mother had not been a monster. I grieved for the family that never existed. I realized then that I had not just given them up for their sake. I had given them up because I knew, deep down, that I was too damaged to raise them. I was too much like Brenda. I had her coldness. I had her pragmatism. I had her ability to cut people out. If I had kept them, I would have resented them. I would have looked at them and seen the ruin of my career. I would have become bitter, and eventually, I might have become her. Giving them away was the only act of love I was capable of. I closed the laptop. I wiped my face. The phone rang. It was an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a voicemail notification popped up. I listened to it. Sao Yu Tsing Haoling, to Jordan. The voice was thin, Brady, and broken. It was Brenda. Jordan, please pick up. I know you are there. Sao Yu Tsing Haoling. 2# is greater than I lost the house. The bank foreclosed. The legal fees. Sao Yu Tsing Haolin. 2# is greater than Mr. Thorne took everything. I am staying at a motel on Route 59. It is filthy. Jordan. There are bugs. She paused, waiting for sympathy that would never come. I need help, she whispered. I am your mother. You cannot just leave me here. I am old. I have nobody. Carol will not talk to me. The church will not let me in. Please, just send me a little money. $500, please. Her voice cracked into a sob. I forgive you, Jordan. I forgive you for everything. Just call me back. I forgive you. The audacity stole my breath away. She forgave me? For saving her grandchildren from her greed? For stopping her theft? I looked at the phone. I looked at the checkbook sitting on my desk. I could send her money. $500 was nothing to me now. It would clear my conscience. It would be the Christian thing to do. I thought about Liam laughing in the snow in Switzerland. I thought about Emily, dead in the ground. Her insurance money safe from the woman who birthed her. I picked up the phone. I went to the call log. I selected the voicemail. I pressed delete. Then I blocked the number. There was no satisfaction in it. No thrill of revenge. Just a quiet, heavy finality. I walked to the window and looked out at the quiet street of Madison. It was snowing. The flakes fell softly, covering the dirty pavement in a pristine white blanket. The storm was over. The wreckage was buried. I was 23 years old. I was a survivor of a war nobody else saw. I had scars that would never heal, but I was standing. I went back to my desk. I opened my constitutional law textbook, page 432, the Due Process Clause. I started reading. I had a life to build, and this time, I was going to build it alone, with walls so high that no one, not a mother, not a lover, not a child, could ever tear them down again. 2 years later, I stood on the steps of the state capitol in Madison, holding a diploma that certified I was a Juris Doctor. The wind was biting, whipping my graduation gown around my legs, but I did not feel the cold. I felt an exhilarating, terrifying lightness. There was no family in the crowd cheering for me. No mother holding a bouquet of overpriced roses. No sister waving a camera. There was just me, my degree, and a bank account that had grown significantly thanks to the consulting fees. Vance Sterling continued to wire me every quarter, a quiet reminder to keep his secrets buried. I walked to my car, a sensible sedan I had bought with cash. I sat in the driver's seat and watched the other graduates hugging their parents. A pang of envy struck me, sharp and quick, but I pushed it down. I had surgically removed the cancer from my life. You do not mourn the tumor. You celebrate the survival. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from an unknown server, a scheduled delivery. I frowned. I unlocked the phone. The sender name made my blood freeze. From Emily Miller. Scheduled delivery via Deadman Switch. Date, May 15th. Subject, if you are reading this. Mom took the bait. My hands trembled. I stared at the screen. Emily had been dead for over 2 years. I opened the email. Saui Ding Haling, 2 hashes greater than Hey Jordan. If you are reading this, it means 2 years have passed since I died. It also means that our mother, Brenda, tried to take the insurance money. I set this email to send only if the legal title of my estate was contested or if custody was transferred to a third party. I knew Mom. I knew she would never raise my kids. She is too selfish, but I knew she would want the $2 million. So I set a trap. I knew she would try to make you the guardian so she could control the trust. I knew she would try to ruin you if you resisted. I am sorry I had to use you as the pawn, Jordan, but you were the only one strong enough to fight her. I knew you would find the paternity test. I left it there for you. I knew you would find Vance. And I knew you would burn her to the ground. The insurance policy? It was real. But the cat charity clause you and Vance forged? It was not necessary. I had already liquidated the real assets into a separate offshore account for the kids years ago. The $2 million was just a honeypot to expose her. It was a test, and she failed. I hope Liam and Sophie are safe. I hope you are free. And I hope Brenda is rotting in the hell she built for herself. Live your life. Jordan, be selfish. It is the only way to survive in this family. Love. Emily. I lowered the phone. The world was silent. The noise of the graduation faded into a dull hum. I started to laugh. It started as a chuckle and grew into a loud, shaking laugh that filled the small car. I thought I was the mastermind. I thought I was the cold, calculating lawyer who had outsmarted everyone. But I was not. I was just the executioner. Emily had been the judge. My perfect, saintly sister had orchestrated the destruction of our mother from beyond the grave. She had predicted every move. She knew Brenda's greed was a mathematical certainty. She knew my ruthlessness was a dormant weapon waiting to be triggered. She had played us all, and she had won. I looked out the window. Across the street, a homeless woman was pushing a shopping cart filled with aluminum cans. She looked nothing like Brenda. Yet, she reminded me of the last update I had heard from Aunt Carol before I changed my number. Brenda was working as a greeter at a discount superstore in Indiana, living in a rented room, telling anyone who would listen that her ungrateful daughters had stolen her fortune. Justice was not a gavel banging in a courtroom. Justice was a slow, grinding erosion of dignity. I looked at the email one last time. 小已经好零, 2 hash is greater than. Be selfish. It was the best advice anyone had ever given me. I pressed the trash icon. The email vanished. I started the car. The engine purred to life. I had a job interview at a top firm in New York City in 2 days. I had a new name ready to legally adopt if I wanted to disappear completely. I had no children to feed. I had no mother to please. I was alone. And for the first time in my life, I realized that being alone did not mean being lonely. It meant being untouchable. I pulled out of the parking lot, leaving the university. The memories, and the ghost of the Miller family behind me in the rearview mirror. As I merged onto the highway, heading east toward the skyline, I smiled. It was a cold smile, sharp as glass, and it felt exactly like freedom.